Hello, hello world, hello YouTube. This is another day and a new video. I'm Finn. Come and join and follow my journey. So the year is 2016 and month is February. So we're living to year 2016 and I had been kicked out of the house share I was living in Ealing. I felt like I had telepathic connection with my old housemate Alejandro. And I felt like this telepathic connection was guiding me to go to Acton Town Police Station to talk about it. And I went there and I spoke to a police officer and I said to him, I have this ex-boyfriend, Subniv, who doesn't leave me alone even though I've threatened him with the cops, and he came to my place anyway. And I've been kicked out of a house share. And I was worried about how the dog is being treated, and I just told him everything. And he just said, "Oh, it just sounds like personal drama, and you should just, if you want Subniv to leave you alone, you should just change your phone number." And I explained to him that I was self-employed and that I had a business, that my phone number was public anyway, so changing my phone number wouldn't change anything. And he said, "Oh, businesses change their phone numbers all the time." But I was trying to explain to him that the information is public because my company is public. And he didn't understand it. And he just sort of brushed it off as I was just being this emotional girl who had personal issues. And then I told him that I was being accused of something that I haven't done. And then he told me not to worry about it. With this, I'm referring to the diamond ring that Milla said that I had taken. Milla was my old Finnish housemate. And then I felt like I wasn't being heard. So I just stayed at the police station. I went in and out a couple of times, and then I just stared at the cop. And then I acted really strangely and like sort of in a way that would raise suspicion. And then the police got concerned about me, and he came to me and he said he's done some kind of, that he's told somewhere that I was a concern, that I was somehow a person who should, I didn't know what it meant, but some that I would be somehow not followed, but that they're concerned about me. He suggested that I would go and talk to a professional, and I felt like this was him saying that I was crazy. The whole day after visiting the police station, I felt like I was being followed, like the police was after me, and I felt like I had to do what the police officer told me to do, and I felt like this telepathic connection to Alejandro was guiding me to Ealing Hospital. So in the evening I went there, and in the lobby, in the waiting area, I was sitting next to a lady who was wearing a hijab, and she had a baby in her lap, and the baby started smiling at me. And then the lady said, "Oh, my baby is usually really shy. He doesn't usually smile at strangers." And then I was like, "Oh wow, that's cool." And I felt like this was part of my telepathic connection to the babies. And then she said, "Oh, you must be a really good person." And then I started crying and I said, "I don't know if I am a good person." And then she said to me that God has made everyone good. And I felt like this was confirmation from Alejandro or God or something, that I was doing the right thing. When I finally got to talk to the psychiatric nurse, she introduced herself. She was this Indian lady, and she introduced herself as, "Oh, I'm a senior psychiatric nurse." Like she sort of seemed to underline the fact that she was a senior. And then I asked her if Alejandro was in the hospital, and she said there's no one like that in there, and that I shouldn't worry about it. And then I started telling my story. I was crying, I was talking about the dog, I was talking about my whole life, I was telling the life story of my grandmother. And then the nurse went in and out of the room several times. And then she asked me questions like, oh, do you feel like you have a microchip in you? And I was like, no. And she was like, oh, are you hearing voices, or are you experiencing anything different? And obviously at this point I knew I shouldn't talk to this person about this telepathic connection or what had happened at Eastern Temple. And I was like, no, I haven't experienced anything like that. And I started to feel like I was being interrogated, and I felt like this wasn't good for me. And then she said to me, would you believe me if I told you that if I gave you some diazepam that would calm you down, that would help you? And I said I declined the offer for diazepam, but I asked that I could stay the night at the hospital because I had a really long way to East London from there, and I felt like I didn't know where to go. And she told me that unfortunately I can't stay the night at the hospital. And I asked if I could have a sandwich because I was hungry. And she gave me a sandwich, and I left there. And I started heading towards Willesden Green, towards the Jewish community house, the Moshe house, where all my belongings were. On my way to the Jewish community house, the Moshe house, I saw this Deliveroo driver they had these big backpacks, and some of them were riding bicycles. So he had his bicycle next to this brick wall, and his Deliveroo backpack next to there as well, and he was sitting on the ground, and he didn't seem well. So I sat next to him, and I was like, what's going on? And he told me that he started his shift, but he's been drinking, and he wasn't mentally, that he was possibly having a mental breakdown. And I told him that I had just had a psychiatric evaluation, and that he should just seek professional help, and that he can talk to someone and he can get through it. And I was just talking to him, and then I was like, okay, I need to call some help for you because you're not well. So I called the emergency number in UK, and then they were like, and I was like, there's this guy, and I think he's having a nervous breakdown. I think we need an ambulance here in Camden. And then I told him that I had rang him some help, and then we waited. It took quite a while for anyone to turn up. And then eventually a police car turned up, and the guy initially he was really grateful that I was helping him, but then when he saw the police, he got pissed off at me, and he was shouting at me. He was like, what the heck have you done? What are you doing? Like, you got me in trouble, and now I never get to go to my houseboat, and I never get to have my home again. And the police took him and left. And then I started walking. I went to an off-license and I bought a beer. And it was the Moshe house, the Jewish community house, was quite a short walk away. And I got a call from the emergency people calling me, and they're like, okay, you had this situation with this guy, this Deliveroo driver that you were helping us. Yeah. And then they were like, how are you doing? And then initially I explained the situation. I said he wasn't threatening to me, and he just got a little bit heated at the end. And then they're like, but how are you feeling? How are you? How am I? And then I was so annoyed, and I felt like I had been followed, and that I was being treated like a suspect. So I just shouted at them, and I was like, I am fine. I am freaking fine. that night at the Moishe house, I didn't sleep at all. I started to be convinced that the police was surveilling my cell phone. And I started to decide that I want to make a movie out of my story. And there's this picture of this eagle attacking this maiden of Finland. And I thought that I was the symbol of Finland and that I was being attacked by this this bigger power. And I sort of, my imagination started running really wild. I started thinking about all the spies, and there was a Russian spy who got killed in London, and I thought about him. I started messaging all different people about different subjects. I sent my brother a message about Freemasons, and I was thinking, how can I make my story even more interesting and appealing for the press, and how can I make this into a movie? At this point, several people, both in Finland and in London, had started to have concerns about me, that they were starting to worry about what I was doing, and where my thoughts were. Anyways, soon I will be talking more about my hospital experiences, and until next time.